how many of you have a go box or a go bag? Something in your house with like the essential stuff in case of an emergency, of a disaster, you've got that stuff, right? Most of us do. So for those of you who have them, what sort of things do you have in your go bags? Water.
Flashlight. Food, a little bit of food.
A little bit of food.
First aid stuff.
First aid.
Matches.
Matches. Okay. That's all. So that's all survival stuff. What about, do you have like important things that you wouldn't want to leave behind? Any stuff like that?
My family, sorry.
Your family's in the bag. That's
Yeah.
good.
And most of that is in the cloud.
Okay, yeah,
Birth certificates, social security,
yeah.
kids.
So like the documents.
Documents, yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, living in Southern California in particular, this is something that it's prudent for us to be aware of, because we're in the sort of place that's susceptible to things like earthquakes and fires, things where you might have to get out quickly. And being able to have the things that are valuable to us, or most valuable to us, easily accessible, so that if, God forbid, we were to lose everything, we would at least have those things that are most valuable to us. I mean, I think that's the idea behind it. And I'm wondering, when I think about what I put in my go box, it makes me wonder what is most valuable to me? What do I consider most valuable? And what are the things that I put in my go box? What do they say about what I value? You have to make some decisions, right? We have to make some decisions about what is most valuable, and then what do we consider expendable? What do we consider not as valuable? Now, I'll bet that in the case of a fire, you're going to want to be able to get out with what you consider most valuable. What you're probably not going to want to do right at the moment that the fire is coming is go look and see how you might be able to purchase some real estate in the neighborhood that's about to be burned down. I mean, Joey's a realtor, so you could tell me, is that a wise?
So weird that that's the first time I've read, and it's about real estate.
Right?
So weird.
All right, so you know what I'm getting at here. You know what I'm getting at here, right? So the reading that Joey shared with us was from Jeremiah, and it's a story where God is telling the prophet Jeremiah to purchase some real estate, right? And it's coming at a time where maybe there wasn't literally a fire happening, but in many ways the world that Jeremiah was living in was on fire, right? This was, let's look back and set the stage, right? This was the 18th year of Nebuchadnezzar. At that time, the army of the king of Babylon was besieging Jerusalem, right? That doesn't sound like, I mean, again, I'll defer to our resident realtor. Is that a wise time to be investing
World
in
War
property?
III? No.
Probably not. Probably not. I mean, unless you want to like scoop up on the fire stuff. Right? But if you're predatory, yeah, we're not talking about arson for profit. But yeah, not the best time to be investing. And I think we could say, fairly accurately, that many of us would describe the time that we're living in right now. In many ways, it feels like the world is on fire. It feels like there's chaos and despair all around us, and we might be wondering, what has value in our time? What is even worth our efforts? What is worth the investment of our energy and our spirit? Now, in that story with Jeremiah, God is telling him, regardless of what you see, invest and purchase this land, because I'm going to do something, and you might not be able to see it right now, but there's going to be value. There's going to be value in this land that you haven't seen yet. God's challenging him to see value in a different way. To reevaluate, perhaps. And I think to be able to see value in a different way, we need to be able to see things the way that God sees them. And how does God see things? Well, through the eyes of mercy, through the eyes of compassion, through the eyes of justice. These are not things that, in the system that we're in currently, are going to get you a lot of immediate return on your investment. They don't create the kind of value that we can immediately see. And God is challenging Jeremiah, and perhaps us as well, to see value differently. Then we also have this story in the gospel of Lazarus and the rich man. And this is a parable that Jesus is telling. Now, in some ways, I feel like I've been beating the drum over the past, I don't even know how many weeks, that the Gospel of Luke seems to have this continual repeated message of if you're rich, you really need to kind of think about what that means and what your relationship is to those who are not rich, and what does that mean to God. And Jesus is telling this story right after he tells the story that we heard last week, which was that story of the crafty steward, the guy who cooked the books so that he could get a favorable treatment from the people that he basically defrauds his master so that he can get favorable treatment. And so Jesus is continuing this thread of challenging people to look at what they value differently. What is valuable? What do you notice? What do you pay attention to? Because I think what you pay attention to also shows what you value. Sort of same sort of idea as your go box. What you put in there shows what you value. And as I was reading this story over this week, there was an image in that story that stuck out to me, and that was the image of the gate. And it's a subtle little detail, but it figures right at the beginning of the story. It talks about Lazarus was this poor, probably homeless guy. He lived right outside the gate of this rich man. And the rich man assumedly passed in and out of this gate quite frequently, and Lazarus was always there. But the rich guy, he didn't notice him. This guy is right outside of his own house, but he doesn't see him. The gate, of course, is keeping Lazarus out, and it's keeping the rich man in. And so there's that image of separation. But I don't want to knock on the idea of gates necessarily, because gates can be good things too, right? I mean, it can be good to have a gate. Gates provide us with protection. Gates can make safe spaces for people who really need to be safe. But gates, of course, can also keep out people who maybe need to be in that safe space also. And they can keep us in. They can keep us in a place where we're comfortable. And we don't have to worry about what's inside. They protect what we consider valuable. And sometimes they can prevent us from seeing the value outside of the gate. So we might ask ourselves, who's sitting at the gate in our own lives? Who might we be passing by on a daily basis and not even noticing? I'm not saying, there's no suggestion in here that the rich guy is a terrible person. It might just be that he's busy. He's a rich guy. He's got things to do. He's got deals to make. Maybe he just doesn't have the time to notice what's right in front of him. And the other thing about this story, and both of these stories actually, is they show us how we can act in ways that have much bigger consequences than we realize, both for good and for evil. The rich man didn't see how this lack of action, this inability to see, would affect him. It had eternal consequences, right? It follows him into the next life. He wasn't able to take the long view of how doing something as simple as paying attention to the poor person at his gate would have these long-reaching consequences that would affect him later. Polar opposite with Jeremiah, who is able to take the long view, who's able to make this investment in something that seemed absolutely ludicrous, but he trusted. He knew that God would be faithful, and so he trusted. And I don't think this has to be a scary story about judgment and burning and all of this stuff. I mean, I know there's some of that imagery in there, but I don't think Jesus told this parable primarily to scare people about judgment and hellfire. I think Jesus told this story to show how the smallest little thing can have a lasting impact that we don't realize. Notice that Jesus doesn't challenge his followers in this story to eradicate poverty. He doesn't even condemn the rich man for being rich. He simply asks them to notice and to take action. And so I wonder if I can notice in my life my own comforts, the things that are inside of the gate. Not that those are bad things, but how can my own comforts, in what ways are they preventing me from seeing what's outside the gate? And how can I use what's inside the gate to help those who are outside of the gate? And it doesn't have to be in an earth-shattering way. We can see from this that simply noticing one person, simply noticing and taking action for compassion, for mercy, for justice, for just the people in our midst who are right outside the gate. That's what it means. That's what it means to follow Jesus. And so how might we use what we have? And how might we notice those who we've been passing by?